Today on Two Tough Nuts, we interview Jason Tyler McLean, the acclaimed author of One Drop of Water. Jason's a master storyteller who weaves deeply personal narratives with universal themes of resilience, self-discovery, and human connection. He's got such a unique ability to explore the complexities of the human experience and draw you into a rich, emotionally charged world that both challenges you and inspires. This episode contains strong language and dark themes. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, we are live.
All right, so tonight we are very honored to have a special guest with us. We have Mr. Jason Tyler McLean with us, and we're going to talk about his amazing book, One Drop of Water. And this is really special for me because I read this book about 3 years ago when I started my journey of sobriety, and I will hit 3 years this month on October 15th. So Jason, thank you so much for coming on our show tonight. It is an honor and a pleasure to get a chance to speak with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Awesome. I'm super excited to be here. And I was thinking about our history because I remember, you commenting and stuff on a post that I blasted down in the States because I'm from Canada. And, I wanted to get some people in the U.S. into my book and, what I'm doing and how I'm helping people. And you and I connected and started chatting. And I remember one of the first things you said to me after you read my book, you said, like, dude, if you're ever coming down, you got a place and you just opened up to me about, your journeys and your migration through everything. And it's amazing, man. And here we are, 3 years later, right? And congratulations on the sobriety. I'm hovering around there myself around the same mark. So it's
awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. It's a wonderful experience to see, to be a part of someone else's migration into like a more powerful state, and remaining peaceful at the same time. So awesome.
Thank you. And it's ironically enough too, outside of the alcohol piece, we have a lot in common with some of the subject matter in your book, and so does Chance here. And I'm sure we'll get into that during our interview process. But you mentioned that you were from Canada, and I kind of just want to give our viewers maybe a little bit of background about you, and where did you grow up in Canada, and can you kind of go into what was your childhood like? Kind of give us a background of how you started.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from a city called Winnipeg. It's right in the dead center of Canada. And so it is extremely cold here in the winter and extremely hot here in the summer. So we get, I'm just above sort of North Dakota in perspective for the States. And so it's pretty harsh here. Like it's, Canada is kind of viewed, I think, by a lot of other countries as a really kind of soft, friendly, happy-go-lucky country, but we definitely have our challenges here as well. But growing up, I grew up in a broken home, a lot of alcohol and violence when I was a little kid. My parents separated when I was probably around 5 or 6, something like that, and I had been exposed to some pretty harsh stuff already at that point in my life, and for the most part, I was a pretty happy-go-lucky kid, like most kids that are, doesn't matter what they're subjected to, they're kids where, and they kind of just bounce back and be resilient. And the psychological damages of what I was going through obviously weren't super apparent at a young age, but my dad was a pretty violent alcoholic and lived a wild lifestyle. He was a biker, and so a lot of parties and he was always blacked out, and a lot of stuff came with that, and a lot of anger. And I kind of grew up in that sort of chaotic environment, and growing up, it continued to get worse. And my dad, his second wife was incredibly psychotic, and she tortured me sexually, physically, emotionally for a couple of years until I tried to hang myself at 8 years old. And that I failed at that, but it caught my father's attention, and he started to noticed that there's a lot of really crazy stuff going on, and he eventually left her, and she said that, if I ever told on her for what she was doing, that she would try to kill me and my sister. And when my dad told her, he found out about all these things and left her, she did try to kill me and my sister. She attacked us with a knife, and I got my sister behind me, and my dad came out of nowhere and tackled her and pinned her against the wall. And, they went up and down the stairs. She was trying to stab him in the neck and kill him, and, all this crazy stuff. She was nuts, man. And so, there's a lot of damage with that. My dad got his shit together after that and got sober when I was about 11, and met another woman, and she was amazing and raised me as her own son. And but by that time, I had so much psychological damage done to me from trauma and all these different things and the experiences that I went through, that it really started to come out as in anger and fear and resentment, and I kind of hated everything in the world, and I just spiraled and met drugs and alcohol, and that just took me down a runaway train path. Like, I was out of control, smashing through everything. And I kind of just, got worse and worse as I got older. And I met steroids, and steroids became my best friend, and cocaine and booze and fighting and partying. And I was just completely out of control. And my anger caught the attention of a lot of people here that were into bad stuff, and I started collecting for biker guys and biker gangs and getting involved in all that kind of stuff, and eventually got into that lifestyle and lived a really wild, out of control, again, tumultuous, chaotic life like that. And it was after one of my close friends, he was shot and executed. He was shot 3 times in the head outside of a church, his body was dumped outside of a church. That kind of was my last straw with that whole lifestyle. And
how old were you when that happened?
That would have been probably my late 30s. I'm 52 now. So yeah, it would have been around then. So in my 40s, I started to kind of weave in and out of trying, I started working with kids that were in gangs, and I started speaking at schools and different things, trying to really, talk about the dangers of that lifestyle and all that. And at the same time, I was still spiraling in and out of my own depression and addiction problems and different things like that. And so, but it just, I made this transition into sales, and I took off with it and was doing really well. And I got this new formed ego with the power and money that I kind of started to obtain with that. And I just got out of control again. And at 47, I had just destroyed everything in my life with my ego, and I was out of control. And I'd been battling depression my entire life and masking it through, always being out and about and, being very social and all these different things. And so at 47, my whole life kind of caved in on me, and I was overwhelmed with, like tsunami waves of depression and destruction, self-destruction in my life. And I ended up trying to take my life in 2019. And it was a perfect storm of everything. And I think that I failed at in my life, and all the guilt and shame and all the things, all the wounds that I accumulated throughout my life that I never treated and healed. I put a gun in my mouth and I pulled the trigger, and the gun jammed, and it still chokes me up every time I say that out loud, because I feel it. So it's a powerful thing. And I was given a second chance. And I was really uncomfortable with that second chance at first. I hated it. I didn't think I deserved it. I was quite mad at the universe and God and everything else, because, ironically, it was failure that was the driving component of my attempt at taking and ending my life, and I failed at that. So I now view that as one of the best failures that has happened to me, and it's become a power source for me now. But After that, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery, self-actualization, and development. And in that process, I ended up writing my book, One Drop of Water, which is autobiographical. It's an autobiography, but at the same time, it's a lot of nuances and nature-based things and experiences and lived experiences combined with the lesson that I learned how to break the different chains that were holding me back with depression and anxiety and all these different things. And with that's launched me into where I am now, where I have the opportunity to speak in front of thousands of people and help people all over the place. And I share my story, and I work with kids, and I do all these incredible things with mental health, and it gets me in front of all these new faces and new people, and make friends all over the world like you guys. And so that's kind of my Cole's notes of how the flow of my life. Obviously, there's a lot more in between, good and bad, but that's kind of the speed round of how it started to where we are now.
Can we kind of chunk it up a little bit and ask you a few questions about kind of each period through your journey?
Yeah, for sure.
You want to go?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, thanks for sharing that. And obviously, you wrote it in a book. You talk about it a lot, but from someone who does not talk about my past a lot, I know it's hard. So truly, thank you for sharing that. I just wonder, so, you had this kind of breakdown period as a child. You tried to hang yourself. I was there myself, so I completely empathize with that. You said your dad kind of woke up. How did that feel? Did you feel validated, or were you so numb? I mean,
it's a little bit of both, to be honest. Like, I was terrified to tell my dad, these things, and I told my younger sister, and no one believed me. And at that time, I told a lot of lies, like every other kid, and I had a lot of negative attention, so I create all these lies and stories and stuff. So, when my dad finally had my back on it, I felt like that nightmare was over. But it wasn't, it had some really reoccurring damaging effects with me throughout my entire life, and it still does. I have to constantly work on things to make sure that I maintain, on the path that I'm on currently. But when my dad got sober, I kind of resented it a little bit because it was different and it was a change. And, I went to I think 11 different schools by the time I was in grade 6. My dad moved all over the place, couldn't hold a place down. So we're always getting evicted and, place to place and all these different things. And so, I lived so erratically that all of a sudden this settled normal life, I couldn't grasp it. And I found it, I found it very challenging. And so I had some resentments for my dad at the same time, but, I was also really, he was my dad, right? And he's my superhero regardless. So I was always really proud. And I remember when he got sober, my dad, drank, man. Like this guy, drove home and chugged a Mickey of whiskey on the way home, drank 12 beers, and then got a 2.6 of whiskey and then pounded that. I used to watch the bubbles go, and then he'd go out. Yeah, like it was intense. And so when he quit drinking, man, I remember him on the floor shaking and crying, like he's having a seizure, like it was crazy. And it's tough because that's your dad, right? And you're still a little boy, and you don't really understand all these things. But when he started after he got past the sickness stage of his withdrawals, he was always a power lifter and a bodybuilder and all these things. But he started running, and we'd go to this gym, and he'd run this track like nonstop, I don't know if he was running from his addiction or if he's running from the demons, or he was just running, man, like Forrest Gump. He didn't stop, and he lost about 20 pounds, and I was just there cheering him on. Like, I thought he was, he was like a superhero, right? So it was a bit of a double-edged sword, I was proud of him, and I just wanted to be I just wanted to feel like I was, the most important thing in his life. And a lot of times I didn't. And then when, by the time that could happen, I think I started really showing a lot of behavioral challenges. I was pretty wild, and I was really angry, and like I just have like these crazy outbursts where I just like flip out and smash everything, and I go full Hulk mode. And I was a skinny little torpy kid, man. I was like, shorter than all the other kids and skinnier than all the other kids, but my anger, my mouth, I was bigger than the Incredible Hulk. So, so I was always in conflict and stuff. So it made it really tough for me and my dad to ever really have that relationship. But he passed away 2 years ago, last week, I think, and from stomach cancer and stuff. So him and I reconciled and became best friends, even when I was all crazy and my roller coaster lifestyle. He was always there, and we've been on great terms, and I still talk to him at night, when I feel him close or whatever, and different things like that. So, yeah.
So I want to say this real quick, because you haven't mentioned this yet, and this isn't in the book. So if the readers or the listeners decide to read your book, this isn't in there. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. I think it was about a year ago. Wasn't that your motorcycle wreck a year ago?
Yeah, that was
died. Yeah.
That was August 28th.
Okay.
And so I had been searching for this particular type of Harley for about a year, and so I got it August 1st. Dumped a bunch of money into customizing it because I have to do that with everything I do. And then, so I get on this thing and I'm loving it. It's beautiful. It's a super hot summer here. Things are great. And it's like, it was a little bit before dinner time, I think. And so I get out on the highway outside, like we have like a perimeter. So it goes around like the highway around the city. It takes you out to all the other highways. And we don't have big freeways here like you guys have. So, so I'm ripping out there and going about 110 kilometers an hour. So that'd be like, I don't know, like 60 miles an hour or something. I'm not sure. And nothing but awesome highway in front of me. Everything's great. My mind is completely clear and empty. I'm loving life. I'm just like this. And then all of a sudden, boom, man, like a landmine blew up underneath me. I don't know what happened. My front end starts shaking like crazy. And I go one way, then the other way, and then my front end just snaps, and I get catapulted at that high speed into the hot summer air. And it was crazy, man. I remember thinking like everything just froze, and I had like 1,000 thoughts and all these things. It was so wild. And I was thinking about just before that, I was thinking about my dad. I wish I could have got a sidecar on it for him before he died. It was one of my last wishes. And so I was like pretending he was riding beside me, kind of, and I had all these things in my head. And I was thinking about the last time I, saw my dad happy before he went in, into the cancer care. And we were watching these monarch butterflies in his backyard. And then I showed him a video of a hummingbird that came in my feeder the day before, because he loved hummingbirds and monarch butterflies and all these things. And anyways, and then all of a sudden, boom, man, I hit that concrete at 110 clicks, and I rolled for 345 feet down the highway. Oh yeah, man, like crazy. And semis are going by, trucks, like it's crazy. And I can't stop. And I remember at the beginning, my bike was flipping behind me, and it's about to land on me, and I'm like trying to like roll faster, and then all of a sudden it slammed in the back. I had a big 280 back tire on this thing, and it caught and then just ripped off about 60 feet into the ditch neighboring the highway. And I remember feeling a little bit of relief for that, but I just kept like, spinning and flipping, and then eventually I finally stopped. And I understand physics pretty well, and I was like, I should be dead right now.
That's so scary, man.
And then I was terrified to move my feet and my hands, because I thought for sure I'd be paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so I lied there for a minute, and I could hear like cars, stopping and people freaking out and all. And so then I just remember like taking this huge breath, man, and being like, and I could move my hands, and I was like, oh my gosh, man. And then I could move my feet. and I was wearing a full face helmet. And so I sat up, and I remember taking it off, and I look at this thing, and it's matte black. So like, even if I just like touch it, there's a stain on it almost, right? And I look at this thing, it's not even a speck of dust on it. I never hit my head once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I think what that did is subconsciously I went like this when I was rolling. And so I like blew out my elbow, broke my wrist. I was like shredded. All my tattoos got ripped off my elbows and my back. And I was bleeding on my legs and everything. Then my bike was like in pieces. And I was pissed off, man. Because I remember like some guy stopped and was talking to me. And I'm like, I just bought the bike. Like I was so mad that I just got it. And then it was like in pieces all down the highway. And so I get up to walk home because I'm in shock. And the dude's the guy's just like, no, I'm like, what do you do? Your back? Like I look at my back was like Quasimodo. Like it was just like blown out. Jeez, and I told the guy, I'm like, I'm going to be late for dinner, man. I got to go. And he's just like, no, there's an ambulance coming. And so the fire department came, the ambulance came and all that, and they strapped me, they hardboarded me and put me in a cervical collar because they thought my spine was busted and I was in shock. And so it's just like, it was crazy. And
that's wild.
I called my girlfriend when I was in shock and told her what happened. And so she showed up there. And so the highway police led her through like the crash rope things and all the tape and all that to come up to the ambulance with her son. And they're freaked out, and I'm lying there getting, and I'm trying to be funny, and they're making me cry and everything because they're terrified, all this stuff. So it was crazy. And then I go to the hospital, and they had a trauma surgery team waiting for me. And I'm telling them, like, I'm fine. Like, this is all just theater. You guys can let me go home. I'm cool. I'm good. And they cut all my clothes off and ripped me through to get CT scans and X-rays. And then they did it again because they're like, we must have missed something. And so I had some internal bleeding from my heart. I had internal bleeding from my heart into my stomach from the impact. Wow. And this elbow was like bigger than a kneecap. It was like massive, blown out to here. I think this arm was the wrong way at the wrist and all that. And then just a bunch of but they said that it was my muscle mass that was what saved my life. And so if anyone out there is listening and you want a reason to, besides all the incredible reasons to work out that already exist, this stuff acts as a buffer if you are launched off a motorcycle at 100 miles an hour. But I was so banged up, man. Like I remember I went to the gym about 2 weeks later, which is the dumbest thing I could have done, but it's just in my brain. And so I'm just going to go there and ride the bike, and I'm just bandaged everywhere like a mummy and all this. And so I get on the bike and I start riding, and this old lady comes up to me and she's like, "Sir, you're bleeding all over the ground over there." And I look down, and my whole arms are just like soaked in blood. So they kicked me out of the gym, and it's like, And then I came back, and I had like casts on both arms, and I'm trying to do curls, and they're just like, "Get out of here, man. What is wrong with you?" Go home. So, but it was tough. Like, I had to. The rehab was awful, but it was like really tough mentally, right? I had PTSD from it because I was reliving the accident every night, and like I'd die in my thoughts or all the crazy stuff, and I couldn't do a lot of the stuff for months, and so it just like I'm a go full throttle kind of guy, and so it was mentally really challenging, more so than the physical part. But yeah, that was a year ago, so it was tough. Like, my dad died the year before that, and I was just getting myself back into where I wanted to be mentally, physically. Even I kind of took a bit of a dive there as well. I just didn't have a lot of my drive that I normally had, and then that accident happened, and it was another big setback. I couldn't even physically write. Like, I'm finishing up my second book now; it'll be out next month. And so I couldn't even type. I couldn't write. I was so pissed off all the time. Like, my wifey was just like, she didn't want to be around me because like I just. Just everything was just compromised, right? So, but you know what? It ended up giving me a bunch of stuff to write about and more stuff to be grateful for, and it gave me more power in the end out of those weaker, weakened times. I always find that's where I draw and create the most powerful new habits out of, right? So. You guys,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Do you still ride?
I'm not allowed to. The wifey says no. My sisters say no.
Okay.
I would. It's not the motorcycle's fault. I've been riding motorcycles for 30, 40 years almost now, right? And I was raised on the back of a Harley with my dad. So I love it. But you know what? Sometimes in life, we got to think about other people beside ourselves. Right. And, you know, I put a lot of people through a big scare there for sure. And, you know, but so maybe someday in the future, but not right now anyway.
Not right now. That's understandable.
So obviously, like, one thing that strikes me is obviously you're a physical guy, you're muscular. You did mention before, so I mean, as you kind of spiraling throughout your adulthood, you're in the gym, you're a big tough guy, and then you started on like steroids.
Yes, sir.
So working out for me is a lot of that is my therapy. That's kind of where I get it all out.
Yep.
Is that the case for you? How did the steroids come into play? Like, how does that all come together?
Well, like I said, I was a tiny kid growing up. Like, I was super skinny and shorter than everybody. I was a late bloomer for sure. I got picked on and bullied like big time. You know, I was different than a lot of the other kids. So, and had a big mouth. You know, I didn't back down, and so I ended up, you know, getting myself in all kinds of situations. And you know, I started, you know, after getting bullied for so long, I just kind of snapped, and I ended up wanting to fight the whole world and everybody. And I was, you know, really angry and stuff. And so, me and a couple buddies, when we were young, like we ended up, getting our hands on some stuff that we had no idea really what it was. You know, we just kind of knew it was some steroids. No one knew really what to do back then. We didn't have the internet, so you couldn't just like research anything and figure out how to do something. You just did it by trial and error. And so we, you know, we tried the stuff, and I just remember like I just got strong and I started to get bigger. And so yeah, I ended up just, you know, getting into this really tumultuous love affair with steroids. And like I blew up. Like right now I'm about 200 pounds, I'm 52, right? So, but I'm like 5'10", so I'm like 200 pounds. And right now, like I'm going to Mexico in 3 weeks. So I'm cutting like right now, so my body fat's really low. But back then I was I got up to about 240 pounds. So like my traps into my ears basically. And yeah, I was massive, like psychotically crazy and on like 5 different types of steroids all the time. And I loved it. It gave me like this crazy rush and confidence and aggression and all these things that fit that lifestyle that I was in.
Yeah.
But it ruined everything else in my life because, you know, I became so dependent on them. And, you know, if someone told me like, oh man, you look a little flat or you look like you got a little smaller, man, I'd go crazy and freak out. And I was so like, I had such messed up broken mirror disorder, like body dysmorphia, megalexia or something they call it for men. I would look at this skinny little boy in the mirror and I was like, you know, I could stand military press 265 pounds. Like I was not a small, skinny kid, but in my head I always was. So the body dysmorphia it was a real challenge for me. So they just, and it, you know, in that lifestyle I was in, it just kind of was, they stayed, you know, it was hand in hand, right? You needed to be aggressive, you needed to be tough, you needed to look the part, be the part, you know. And you know, I sent a lot of messages to people physically, so I had, you know, if I had to grab hold of someone or throttle someone or whatever it was, you know, obviously I had to have you know, the strength to do that. And so it became a very scary addiction for me for sure. And you know, it's a wonderful place now where supplements and so many different things, you know, are out there. Like I use TRT now, and it's, you know, controlled and all these different things.
Yep.
You know, because I did so much damage to my systems by abusing steroids for so long. So, you know, and I'm not one of those people that tries to hide these things. I'm not the Rock that lies about, you know, being on growth hormone and steroids.
He's so full of shit, man.
Yeah,
what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, the guy says he's the hardest worker in the gym. I'm like, no, you're not, man. You're like, get out of here. Yeah. You know, the guy's such a liar. Like all these guys, like if you admit it, I got respect for you. And, you know, and it, like, there's nothing wrong with, you know, doing something that helps you feel better and keeps you young and keeps your vitals better and all these different things. And, you could spend thousands of dollars on these fake supplements, or you could just be honest and do what you got to do. Right. And so that's how I view it. And, it's low controllable doses of testosterone and all that. And, there's no rage with it. It's nothing like that. Right. So, but, people ask me about steroids all the time, and I'm very honest and open about it with people. I tell them if you're going to do them, really research it, really understand the diet, how they affect you, what happens when you come off them, all the different things. But, there's a mental fortitude that's got to go along with it, right? A lot of these people expect to, just juice up, and then life gets easy and training's easy and you don't have to work and diet and do all these things. And that's not the case, right? So, and then you got to...
I guess that was kind of also, I mean, did coming off of, or were you still cycling whenever you said everything kind of spiraled out of control again and you
I was off them then. Like I couldn't, I went from making like $250K a year to like riding a mountain bike in a year, man. Like I lost everything. And so I couldn't afford to do them anymore. And, I lost weight and size, and, that really screwed with my head. And people would, say these things to me that like, oh, you look, this. And, people thought I was on crack and all this stuff. And, I wasn't. I just was depressed, and I couldn't eat, and I couldn't afford any of the things. And so it was a really tough thing to go through. Like I said, it was the perfect storm of pretty much everything going wrong in my life all at once. That led me to that really sad and unfortunate place where I thought that by murdering myself was the only way out of my pain and suffering. And I would definitely say that I was addicted to alcohol. I still was using painkillers and cocaine once in a while and different stuff. And so I'd always self-medicated with something, and not being able to do that anymore really forced all those demons inside me to the forefront of my life. And I couldn't defeat them, I guess, at that point. And so it was after my suicide attempt that, I faced what I call the shadow monster in my book, which is basically, myself, but all the demonized and depressed and, addicted parts of my brain and ego, and faced it on and fought it and beat it, in order to obtain my sanity and my peace and get my life back.
Yeah. I want to tie something in too, Jason, with the talk about steroids and working out. And I know I may get this wrong. I'm going to paraphrase what you put in the book, but I really can identify with a lot of your story, even the working out piece. But one of the things that stood out to me was when you talked about tattoos. And there was a passage in the book about how you got yoked up, you want to be big, you wanted to be scary, and you got tattoos because basically you want to tell the world, don't fuck with me, don't bother me, and leave me alone. And man, when I read that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was put. But when I read that spoke to me, man, because my back, I'm covered in tattoos. They're just not visible on my arms because of my job. But I had that mentality for most of my adult life, man. I didn't want to be talked to. I didn't want to be messed with. I just wanted to be left alone. And when I read that, man, it really it hit me like a light switch, man.
Yeah. Well, it's if you look at nature, right? Like, you read my book, I talk about nature, and you follow me on the social. So I'm always talking about nature, but what in nature, animals that are dangerous, they're brightly colored, right? They're naturally tatted up, essentially, right? They got warnings all over the body, and that's kind of what I mimicked. And I wanted, and so I wanted to warn people, like, stay away from me. And maybe it was because I was a scared little boy inside my big body. That's kind of what I talk about in the book as well. Yeah, my whole life, like even every fight, I've been in a ton of fights, man, and every fight I ever got in, I was terrified. I just reverted back to this little boy. And I've always felt like that for so long until, I finally freed myself. But I always felt like a little tiny boy trapped in this big, showcase of armor that I've built up. But for me, it's like to keep people away from me out of fear. So
I can relate to that. Yeah, I can relate to that 100%.
Yeah, me too. And that's one of those that I think we laugh. I work as a chef and in kitchens, and you got the chefs and they're all tatted up, in the face and everything else. It's that personality that just
artistic.
They've all have that same personality though. It's just leave me alone. This is my way of saying I'm not friendly.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And then they're really, really nice people when you get to know them.
Yeah, most of us are, man. That's the thing. Most of us are, like it's just, we've been through some stuff in our life that's, changed how we want to be seen or how we don't want to be seen. Right. And so, those experiences shape us and, so it's a defense mechanism for some of us. And if it's an offense mechanism for some of us. Right. So,
Yep.
Well, kind of tying back into that, Jason, you're kind of carrying the torch when it comes to men's mental health awareness. And Chance and I started this podcast to focus on that area because he and I both have shared our testimony. We both had life experiences and both struggled with alcohol and suicide attempts, things of that nature. And in your opinion and with your expertise, what are some steps or what do you think that needs to be more addressed, say, in our society as far as men's health is concerned? Because there are so many guys. I'm 45, so I'm an 80s kid. Yeah. And I know so many guys. I'm an ex-military, I'm ex-law enforcement. We're always told, suck it up, don't be a bitch, don't talk about your feelings, always be better than the other guy. And I can relate to you, man, because I was that scared little boy trying to prove to the world that I was a badass, but I hated myself. So, but I was always on edge and just trying to be the best because I just felt like a failure. Yeah, I think there's so many men out there that numb and self-sabotage and try to medicate to not sit in the pain and deal with the trauma. Like, so what advice do you have other than they need to read your book for sure? Because your book is badass, man. It's incredible. But, and I'm not just saying that because I know you, but it really hit me hard when I read it, man. But what would you give as far as advice to guys out there that are struggling?
Well, the first thing that I'd address on it is, like you said, we got this culture with males that, it's that boys don't cry club. Mm-hmm. Same thing, I was born in 72, like that's like 10,000 years ago, it seems like now. But, we had woolly mammoths back then still. And, Canada, man. That was the thing, man, we'd go to the hockey rink, you'd be minus 40 here, and your dad tied your skates up so tight you couldn't feel circulation in your feet. And if you started crying, he told you to skate faster. So, as guys my age and you're a little bit younger and so forth, as we've gone through the generations, there's been a little better steps towards awareness of men's mental health. But a perfect example would be if I went out with 5 of my buddies and say we went to a hockey game and then, after we're sitting around and they're having beers and I'm not. And because I'm always the designated driver because I don't drink. And so we're sitting there and, they're talking about this and this. And I was like, you know what, guys, maybe we should all go around the circle and let's share something, that we're really struggling with. All my buddies would fall off their chairs laughing, right? They'd be like, right. And so it's just tough. But I think, one of the most necessary things that we need as men is to understand that it's okay. It's okay to fucking break down. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have a broken heart. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to lean on someone, and we don't a lot of times until almost it's either way too late, or for the wrong reasons. And so I think that's a big step for sure. And so that was one of my primary fundamental purposes in doing this was, I know what I look like and I know what I sound like and I know what kind of life I've had, and that resonates with all kinds of people, but especially a lot of men that, wouldn't normally deal with this sort of stuff or talk about this sort of stuff. And so I wanted to sort of be that voice that was for, to start the conversation for other people. And it's a tough subject, man. No one wants to admit that they've been so desperate in their lives that they wanted to take their life, or that they're out of control with alcohol or gambling or sex or whatever it is, or that, they they are full of fear and they're scared. So, this or that. So the main thing I would say is that awareness part of it is great, but we have to learn to accept ourselves and be able to say, like, you know what, some bad shit happened to me, or I did some bad shit when I was a kid or a teenager or an adult, or I effed up this relationship. And we have to learn that we can forgive ourselves. And that's a tough thing for a lot of men, especially, to do.
Very hard.
Is to forgive ourselves, because, we kind of hold on to these things throughout our life, and we just kind of shelf it, right? We don't really deal with it. But we're carrying that weight of it, and we keep shelving and shelving and shelving. And then all of a sudden you got this tremendous amount of weight on your shoulders, and then you crumble. And that's what happened to me. And it's probably happened to both you guys, and anybody that's really had a breakthrough in, self-improvement has, they got to that point. There's a breaking point.
Yeah.
And I would love for more men to stop before that breaking point. And how that hasn't happened
100%.
is resources, like people, getting to men's mental health groups, talking to a psychiatrist or talking to a counselor or anything, being around like-minded people. There's I can't go be around people that are negative, and I can't be around people that want to party, and I can't go around, my old biker buddies. I just can't do that, because it's not relevant in my life anymore, and it doesn't present any type of positive direction that it's the opposite. And so, it comes down to that first step is awareness. The next one is acceptance of our faults and ourselves. Then it's, asking for help without shame. There's a lot of stigma, obviously, still, not just for men, but for all mental health. And especially when we get into the really sensitive subject of suicide. Everybody loves to paint the big picture, like, they want to help, but then when it really comes time, when someone's struggling like that, you'd be surprised how many people back the fuck out real quick.
Oh yeah.
Because it's real, and people nowadays don't know how to deal with real, man. Everything is so fraudulent and fake. So, but I think it takes people like you and I that are, like renegade in spirits, that will go against the grain, and no matter what, and get those messages out there and get those stories out there that resonate and will have a lasting effect with other men, and let them know that it is okay. It is okay to feel these things. It is okay to give into all these pressures that weigh us down, but it's not okay not to get help, and it's not okay to carry this through. And these wounds that we're taking with us our whole life, they're bleeding all over other people that didn't cause these wounds, because we don't heal them. Yeah. So it all comes down to those pieces for me. And I think the more men that take that first step out into, improving their mental health, or stop drinking, all these different things, it has, like my book, One Drop of Water, I talk about the waterfall effect, and it starts with one drop of water. And it's the same thing. Like, I'm sure you, by stepping out and taking that one step and saying, you know what, I'm going to go on this mental health migration, and I'm going to do this, someone else has been impacted by it, and now they followed suit, right? Or maybe because you stopped drinking, someone else has, right? And I know for sure I have. And so I think it takes guys, like us, to lead other men in the right direction and show them that it's okay to do this. Like, it's not that bad.
No.
Yeah. So I like to ask this question a lot, and we've got some different opinions. I've got my own opinion.
Yep.
What do you think the stigma around opening up and talking about mental illness, or, past traumas, where do you think that stigma comes from?
Well, the two biggest fears that people have that hold anyone back in life from going after what they want to truly do, accomplish, all those things, are what are people going to say and what are people going to think? And the fear of those two things has crippled more people's dreams and ambitions and goals than anything else. And we live in a society where it's really easy to talk shit about people and to be uncaring and to be fake. And it's almost celebrated. And to me, it's disgusting, and I hate it. And because I can't be those things. I was a lot of those things for a long time. But sorry, I lost track of where I was going there.
So we're talking about.
I got all angry at the things there. Sorry, the initial question was.
Yeah, so talking about where the stigma of men opening up about themselves.
Yeah, so I think, and then so with the fears of, again, what are people going to think or what are people going to say? You know, men we're a little bit territorial by primordial nature. We're competitive, through our DNA, and so I think that weakness is viewed as this really horrible thing, and it's kind of ironic because there's this huge movement of toxic masculinity and all this shit talk about a strong man and all these different things, but a true strong man is someone like us that is in tune with their faults and in tune with their weaknesses and turning them into strengths to help others and themselves. And that stigma, I think, is trapped with people that are close-minded, and they don't like a lot of the world is very ego-driven, and so anything that other people are doing to improve themselves, a lot of people are they have resentments towards those people, and so I think that's where stigma comes from. You start to see people do better or improve their mental health or improve their life in whatever aspect, and people will shit talk and people will do this and people will try to sabotage it and all these different things. And so that negativity, that dogma, that stigma, I think it just comes from other people's insecurities, and they don't want to see other people do better. And it's sad, and like I said, I find it disgusting, because we should all want someone to be mentally healthy. We should all want men to be strong. We should all want women to be strong. We should all want everybody to be powerful and peaceful in their life. And, that stigma is big in people's workplaces. It's big at schools. It's big in relationships. And often, the person that you think you could count on sometimes the most is the worst person holding on to that stigma against what you want to do with, improving your mental health. And the last thing I'll say about it is that there is a lot of hot air talked about, overcoming the stigma, but it takes work. And just like self-improvement takes work, and, stopping drinking takes a lot of work, and all these different things. And people don't want to put the work in. So it's almost like a bit of an excuse to hold on to that stigma so you don't have to make those changes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it. And so I just try to smash through the stigma everywhere I speak. I get in front of, whether I can go in front of hired to go into a workplace and talk in front of 12 people, or I can go and talk in front of 10,000 people. I talk about that stigma and how we can overcome it all the time. Because, think about the person that does want to make that change, but they're too scared to, because they're worried about what everyone else is going to say about them or think about them. Yeah. And that's what's holding us all back.
Well, I think too, tie in the workout piece too. I mean, if you're in really good shape, people talk shit. Oh, he takes steroids. Yeah. Oh, he didn't have a job. He just works out all day. And then you flip it. Oh, he's gonna mess up. He's not really healthy. He's not really sober. And I've experienced that firsthand in my journey. I've had people that I thought would never walk out of my life that were like exit stage right. They're gone. It's like
it's crazy how it happens, man. But
I've had really good people come into my life when the bad people were pushed out. But it's wild, man. Like, you just kind of realize that this journey, we're all on our own journey, but this journey is not, it's just not not a conventional one. It's very, like you said earlier, rebellious almost in spirit, because you're charging a path that other men are not willing to take because of their ego or what people are going to say about them. And I kind of get off, man. It's almost like a 1% club, man. Like using the biker reference. Like, hey, I'll be a 1%er all day, baby. Like,
Yeah. And you look at drinking in society, right? Like, I mean, it's the most celebrated addiction in the world, and it's nuts to me. And people, you tell someone you don't drink, so they automatically assume that you must have been out of control, or you got wasted and crashed your car, or you beat your wife, or there always has to be this like horrible thing attached with it. And I'm like, well, what if I just didn't want to put poison in my body anymore.
Yeah.
What if you just want to?
What if I just don't want to get cancer? So I stopped drinking. All these different things. But again, there's it's this like reverse stigma with quitting drinking in society, right? Because again, it's hey, we should go out for drinks, and it's wine night for the ladies, and hey, let's go, boys, let's get the beers, and it's just like you said, you got to go against the grain sometimes, and it's not an easy path, but those are the best paths to walk down, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
So one thing that I talk a lot about that, again, I think it ties in really well, because I think a lot of stigma comes from a lack of community as well.
Agreed.
Community is so important to me. Again, because it gives you people that surround you that are trusted, and who else are you going to open up to? It somebody you trust, unless you're morons that do it online for everyone to see.
Yeah.
But I wonder what your thoughts are on community and kind of what your community that you built looks like for you.
Yeah. So, for me, I got a small community, and that works well for me. I used to have a really big fake village for many years, because again, like I said, I was always out and about, and, any person that sat beside me on a bar stool was my new best friend, basically, right? So, now I keep it very simple. So my community is, like my family and my close friends and like-minded people, that again are looking and doing the same sort of things I'm doing or similar things. And you got to have people, like you said, it's about trust. And that's a rare commodity these days, especially when you start, like we've talked about, getting into self-improvement or taking the tougher paths in life that lead to better places. Same thing goes for me, man. I lost tons of friends when I stopped drinking. The life of the party wasn't coming out anymore, right? So nobody wanted me around. All of a sudden, I'm not buying everybody drinks. It's weird. No one was phoning me anymore.
Yeah.
That's how that worked. Yeah, weird how that happened. And I don't hold resentments against those people. It's cool. They're probably still, talking the same dumb crap, sitting in the same place, doing the same thing. Good for them. And if that makes them happy, cool. And if it doesn't, cool. So. But like you said, community it's an important thing. I think that people have to also they have to be ready to be able to harness a lot of this alone. So I think there has to be a really nice harmonious balance between, what you can do in a little bit of isolation and what you can do with your community, and finding that perfect balance within that, for me anyway, was really, really, really impactful and helpful.
Very nice.
And I think men have to be comfortable, like you just said, being alone if you're gonna heal, if you're gonna sit in this pain and you're gonna grow and learn from it. You've got to get used, not all the time, but you've got to be comfortable enough with yourself to start that process and continuing to work. Because like you said earlier, I mean, this is an ongoing thing. It's not just an overnight or quick fix. You got to continuously do it.
Yeah, and it's hard. I'll say this because I know how it feels to truly just like hate yourself. And so the last person you want to hang out with is someone that you hate.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting around and you hate yourself, like, that's a hard prospect. Do you have a perspective on that, Jason, of like the mental mind space of, oh man, I really don't care for myself right now, but I've got to sit in my head here?
Yeah. For my whole life, I had no idea who I was. I was a million different people every day. And I was so lost within myself, and I hated myself because I messed everything up. I fucked everything up. I would do good for a bit and then just self-sabotage. If things were going good for me in anything, I'd ruin it. And, it stems from some trauma from, obviously my erratic and chaotic, early life. But it just, so my whole life, again, not knowing who I was, and I was never my own friend. And so after I decided to go on this journey, I got to the point, so I was terrified to be alone, because when I was alone, like you said, I had to sit in that really uncomfortable space with all my thoughts and all my pain and all my fears.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. And that's why I always was out and about and around people or drinking or self-medicating, all these things. But when I decided to make my changes, I actually started to sit alone and all day. And so it was around like COVID had just begun. And so we were isolating up here and I lived alone at the time. And so I was like basically stuck in my apartment by myself all day. I couldn't go anywhere. They shut the gyms down. I couldn't do those things. So I was kind of forced into it. And so I would get up at like 4 a.m. and I would stay up and as long as I could and be alone all day in silence. Like I wouldn't even listen to things. I kind of took it, like almost like Navy SEAL kind of crazy approach. Like, and I was like fasting and doing all these things and then reading and writing and exercising and pushing myself mentally, emotionally and physically as far as I could go. And until I learned to be comfortable in that. And in that process, what ended up happening was I started to learn who I was. And in that process, I did a lot of writing where I'd write out all the negatives about myself, but then I'd write out the positives. I did this one piece where I wrote to myself, would I want to be my friend? And I listed off all the reasons why I would want to be my friend and all the reasons why I wouldn't. In the beginning, why I wouldn't was about 14 pages and why I would was about half a page. Wow. And as I started to push myself through all these different things, by, a couple months later, it was, 5 or 6 pages of why I would and maybe 1 or 2 pages of why I wouldn't. Yeah. And when we develop that relationship with ourselves and we can actually become our own friend, because we can talk to someone else and offer them all the solutions and all the things to help them, but then we hate ourselves, right? Yeah, and, sure. We can't apply it to ourselves. And it really took for me learning how to trust myself, love myself, understand myself so that I could become my own friend. And once I was able to do that, man, I love being alone. I tell my wifey that she really interrupted that because I was doing just fine all by myself. And I was like, this is the best. I don't need anybody. I'm going to be alone forever. And this is going to be awesome, man. I was really into it. And then she stumbled into my life and everything's great. But I always make the joke with her like that. But again, I wouldn't have been rewarded with such an amazing woman if I wasn't able to be who I was, right? Because I just would have screwed it up and messed it up like I did with everything else in my life, right? So it's key. You gotta be your own friend. And when you can be your own friend, guess what? You don't hate yourself anymore, right?
Yep. Yeah, we talked about this on another podcast, and like you just said, if you can learn to, it took me years to finally, and I'm still working on loving myself. I'm probably about 90% there, but I hated myself my whole life. But I've noticed through my journey, the more I work on myself, I have an amazing girlfriend that I wouldn't be dating if I hadn't went through the steps to heal and grow and to learn to forgive myself and love myself, because I was just a train wreck and mad at the world, full of rage and spiraling out of control, before I met her. So it's funny how the work you put into yourself will affect the world in a positive way, even when you may not even see it, because you're contributing to society versus taking away from society. 100%. And you're just in this destructive mindset all the time.
Yeah. And, when you can, every day I start the day, I sit in darkness for about 10 minutes, I do some breathing. I go through what I'm, very grateful for and have tons of gratitude for and what I'm thankful for. And then I offer into, God and the universe what I'm going to do, like what I'm going to give, and that's a really powerful exercise to develop that love for yourself, right? Because like you said, when we get into these positive states and we are doing good work and we're conducting ourselves in a good manner that has a positive impact on other people, well, you're creating all this positive, energy, and that's contagious. And like you said, it starts to flow into all different aspects and different directions in our lives, and we're rewarded for it. And we continue to, the more you continue to give and the more you continue to offer, the more it comes back to you, right? And it's a beautiful cycle. And the exact same thing will happen with negative if you want it to go that way too. And it actually works a little bit faster negative, right? But you want to wake up and be miserable and hate the world. Guess what? The world is going to be miserable and hate you right back. It don't care. The world doesn't care, man. Time doesn't care. Nope. It really doesn't. And so it's up to us whether we want to conduct that direction in a positive way or negative, and so learning to love ourselves is a huge thing, because again, it's that one drop of water effect. Again, it's that one drop starts a waterfall. You love yourself, someone else is going to be affected by that, and it's going to change them, and that's going to change someone else, and it continues and grows that waterfall, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's powerful, right? And again, as men, we're taught not to really love ourselves or know ourselves or anything, right? We're just like, and get through life, and like we'll figure it out, and no matter how much it hurts us or hurts someone else. And when we love ourselves, we don't act that way anymore, right? We're proactive in our positivity instead of reactive in our negativity. So.
It was probably easier when we were cavemen and dying at 23 years old.
Quite possible.
Yeah. Well, where can we find your book? So for our listeners out there that want to pick up a copy, I know I got it on Amazon.
Yep.
But can you kind of tell us? And we're in Tennessee, so we're a long way from Winnipeg.
Yeah. But, Amazon for you guys, Amazon.com down in the States. So it's available on I think 17 different marketplaces now on Amazon, which is wild. And I get these little reports that show me if someone buys in Japan or in Brazil or whatever. So it's super cool. But yeah, so Amazon, so it's available there for paperback like you have, or on Kindle for those that like the Kindle reader. I'm actually going to re-release the audiobook. I never did the audiobook, so I'm going to re-release it as an audiobook in a few months.
Awesome.
After my next book comes out, I'm going to release my next book is called The Monarch Butterfly Effect, which is a chapter in One Drop of Water. Yep. So it's an extension of that. And when I wrote this book, actually 17 of those chapters are going to become their own books. So this is the first one in that. It just took a longer time because, like I said, my dad dying and my motorcycle accident kind of ate up about a year and a half of my life there, where I was, going through challenges of depression and physical and mental imbalance for sure. So, so right now available on Amazon, and then when the audiobooks come out, they'll be available on all the Audibles and Amazon and all the different things like that. So
we'll put a link too on the podcast will be on YouTube, and we'll put a link for your book on Amazon at the bottom of the podcast, so we can
appreciate that.
Make it easy. And I want to say this real quick, Jason. And so I kind of said this earlier, but when I started my journey of sobriety, I wasn't a guy that read books. I just didn't. I went to the gym. I ran trails, drank. I didn't read books. And I attended 2 AA meetings. They didn't work for me. And I read the Big Blue Book. I just read it. Your book and Jordan Peterson's book. I just lost my train of thought. At the second one he put out, I can't think of it. I should know this. It's upstairs. But anyways, I saw your ad on Instagram, and the reason I bought your book, and you're going to laugh when I tell you this, was the way you looked, man. I could tell you worked out, you had tattoos, you're a cool looking guy, and I thought, I'm going to check this guy out. All right, cool. I read about the little entry or the little bio there. I thought, man, this guy's kind of like me, and I bought your book, man, just off the internet, and I read it. And I got to tell you, I got a lot out of this book that helped me with my sobriety. But then flash forward a year after I read your book, I hit my year mark of sobriety and got hit with from my ex-wife, hey, I want a divorce. Yeah. So your book not only helped me with my journey through sobriety, but it helped me go through a divorce, man. And I know divorce hasn't been brought up a lot in this podcast, and I don't remember reading a lot about it in your book other than your childhood growing up. But I think really your book, man, it hit some major areas in my life, major dark trials that I had to go through, and I'm very grateful for you, man. I know God has a purpose for your life. I mean, you obviously have cheated death. There's a reason you're here. More than once, you cheated more than once. There's a reason.
Yeah, twice in like 6 years now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna cut it there. I don't want to cheat it anymore. I'm good. You know, I'm good.
You're done, man. But I am so grateful to you, man. I'm grateful for you coming on our show, and likewise, man. This is definitely a must read for any guy out there that needs to kind of get his shit in order and work on his own journey and his mental, physical, and spiritual health, man. It encompasses everything. Yep. But thank you.
Oh man, thank you. You know what? That's everything you just said. There is the reason why I wrote the book, man. You know, and I put myself out there, which is terrifying to do. You know, and expose the most vulnerable parts of your life and your weaknesses and the hardest things and all the, you know. And I did it because I believed with all my mind and all my heart and all my spirit that it would do exactly what you just said. So that, like, honestly, man, it tears me up. It hits me in all the right places. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, man, I appreciate
We appreciate you doing it, man. And like I said, being on, joining us. And
yeah.
We may not be smart, but we're also ugly.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you know what? I'll be launching my next book in about a month, and then so for you guys after that, I can either send them to you or something like that, and then
awesome.
We'll go on it after that one and have another chat if you guys are up for that.
Yeah, I'd love to get you back on the show, read your next book, and then kind of pick your brain, man. I'd love to get the opportunity to do another podcast, and I'll definitely keep in touch through platforms.
We've been chatting 3 years now, man.
Yeah, dude, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. It's very cool. And it's really cool that you actually responded to me when I sent you that message, because I just kind of shot it out there to see if you'd even pick it up. But hey, man, thanks for reaching back and taking time out of your day,
I make a point of that, and because, like I said, it means a lot to me, and I know how hard it is to go through this stuff because I really lived it, right? And so I really make a point of it. But it's funny. I get asked this a lot, and people are like, do you get, people that, support you? And I said, what's crazy is I've had people that I've never met in other countries, and you're this reference point, that have supported me, shared my stuff, liked my stuff, more than some of my close friends, here have. Yeah. And so it's really cool, man. Like I said, like 3 years later, you send me a message, and I replied, and I have lots of people, the same thing, that tell me this, like, I can't believe you replied, man. And, it to me, I wear this as a badge of honor. Like, I truly do. Like, this is no fucking joke to me. This is my life. Right. And I've dedicated it to helping people, and through my words and through my stories and through my insights and strategies and whatever. And this is just testament to, going along with what I believed would happen. So I appreciate it so much, guys.
Yeah, man.
It's our pleasure, and it's truly a pleasure to have you on and hear your side of the story and dig a little bit deeper, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Appreciate it, Jason. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you guys so much.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
Take care, man. Awesome.
All right. See you, man.